So Kaila, you are reading My Side of the Mountain,
Yes.
right? So, I hear that you are the sort of reader that likes to make connections to her reading. Can you tell me a little about that?
Since my family, we do a lot, like, we travel a lot of places, so I've done a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
And if I read, like, a sentence that I like, then I just think, like, oh, I've done this before.
Interesting. So the kinds of connections you make are to things you've done.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example, like in this book, where that happened?
Well, he goes traveling on a mountain, and I remember when I was little, I used to like to climb mountains, and yeah.
Huh. So I have kind of a hard question. So because you've traveled, you've gone mountain climbing, and you're reading this book, and this character goes mountain climbing, you connect it. How does connecting that help you understand the book better?
Well, it helps me understand because, like, maybe I'll know how they're feeling if they don't explain it, because I know how I was feeling.
Wow.
So it'll help me, like,
Huh.
find out how they might be feeling or, like, yeah.
So now I have another hard question. So there's some places you make a connection and it helps you understand. Are there any places where you make a connection but then you realize, okay, I'm connecting, but actually this doesn't really help me understand. It's not that important.
Well, if there's like a favorite type of food, that wouldn't help me connect if I had the same favorite type of food, because it doesn't really help explain the story at all.
Got it. So it has to be a place,
It
something.
could be like something I've done or like something that I know that someone else has done,
Huh.
and
But
I'd
sometimes,
like to do myself.
right, I didn't mean to interrupt. So sometimes it's a connection that helps you understand. Sometimes there are connections that don't help you. So it sounds like there are important connections and not so important connections, like almost two types, right? In this book, you just mentioned that one part about the mountain climbing, and that did help you understand. And sounds like in a book, My Side of the Mountain, that would be pretty important, right? Can you think of a place where you made a connection that you realized you connected, but it didn't really help you understand so much? Can you find me a part?
When he went to a library,
Oh, show me. Did you find it?
well, he said, like, to the library.
Uh-huh.
He's going to the library, and I'm like, oh, I've been to a library before, so, you know.
Okay, but it was like, okay, I've been, not that important, right? The reason that I'm bugging you about this is that I think we talk a lot about how important it is to make connections to what you read, but the dirty little secret here is that not every connection helps you understand the book, right? I think to read harder and harder books, you have to not only notice places where you make connections, but also be able to say, okay, important connection, not so important connection, right? If you get really good at making that decision, then you can read harder and harder books, because sometimes connections can just be distracting, right? They can be sometimes helpful, they can be sometimes distracting. What would you think about doing an assignment in this book, looking for some connections that are helpful, but also some that are not so helpful, just to practice telling the
It
difference?
would be interesting.
Kind of interesting, right? So what do you think? Should we look for 5 and 5? What's a good number?
Yeah, maybe 5 and 5.
Want to shoot for 5 and 5? Okay. Where are you up to in the book?
I'm on page 57.
57. So here's what I'm thinking. How about if you look for some helpful and not so helpful connections in the part you've already read, but then you look for some more in the parts you're about to read? How many days do you want to work on this? Today's Monday, so
How about I go to Friday too?
Go
Since
to
we're
Friday?
in the same class. I'd probably read up to like 72, probably.
72. Kind of challenge you to go a little farther?
Sure.
How about here? 96. That's pretty good, right? Okay, so you're going to read up to 96. You're going to find 5 helpful connections, 5 not so helpful. So when you find them, do you want to do it with Post-its, or do you want to just put it in your reading notebook?
I'll just put it in my reading notebook.
So just put like the page number and then write helpful and say why, or not so helpful and say why. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so on Friday, you'll have 5 helpful, 5 not so helpful. And I'm thinking, when you're done, just write a sentence or two about what you notice about helpful and not helpful, what you think about that. Make some sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is going to be really important work for you because you are the kind of reader who makes connections, which is a big step in understanding harder books. But the next step, after you get good at connecting, is making decisions about when connections are helpful and when they're not helpful. So if you get really good at that, you're going to be reading, crazy hard books in no time. Make sense?